This is the third video in this series on how we got so fat and what to do about it. This video is all about intermittent fasting or fasting. Mankind has been fasting for thousands of years, not because we had a choice, but food would become scarce. There were famines. And particularly in wintertime, if game was scarce, we went hungry. And when we did that, we had an adaptive mechanism. We had a lot of storage. During times of plenty, we would store up fat in our bodies. And when times were lean, we would dip into our stores and use them. Well, as we all know, grocery stores never close now. There's food available all the time, and the famine never comes. And we are getting fatter and fatter as a nation. So, what are the reasons that people are fasting? Well, the primary reason is weight loss. People want to lose weight. As I talked about in the second video, the ketogenic lifestyle, very often when you're on the ketogenic, not really a diet, but when you've assumed the ketogenic lifestyle and are living like that, people plateaued. I plateaued at around 200 pounds. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get down below that. So that's when I started doing intermittent fasting. The other reason is reversal of metabolic syndrome. Weight loss is great, but it's even more important that if you're metabolically ill, if you can clean your liver out, your visceral fat out, and reverse the metabolic syndrome, that's where you really do yourself some tremendous benefits to your health. Maintaining a normal metabolic rate, we'll talk more about that. That's very important because in a lot of the diets, your metabolic rate drops, and it's one of the reasons why people stop dieting, because they feel so bad. If you have any condition that causes inflammation, I noticed that my allergies got dramatically better. I don't know if it was my imagination or not, but it seemed like my allergies got better. I had a lot of nasal polyps. I don't have that anymore, and I'm ascribing it to the fact that I've been on this program of eating for the last year. What is very interesting for baby boomers particularly is there's a lot of evidence that this can slow the aging process, and we'll talk about that probably in another video. And energy and mental clarity. Frequently when people are doing things that require a lot of brain function, fasting is very helpful in that situation. We all know what happens after a big lunch. It's very difficult to stay awake in lectures. So here are the things that I'm going to be covering today in this. I'm going to talk about the physiology of dieting, the different types of fasts, the ketogenic lifestyle and intermittent fasting, how are those two related, how to get started on intermittent fasting, what to eat and drink while you're doing that, and problems with intermittent fasting and how to solve them. So let's just review our two-compartment energy storage. This is if you're carb dependent, and use the analogy of you're eating out of a mini fridge. You're eating 6 to 11 times a day. 70% of your calories are coming from carbs, as the food pyramid tells us we should. Well, what you're doing is you're constantly loading up on your glycogen stores in your liver and your muscles, and then in between meals, you're using it up there, but you never actually get rid of the you never actually use up all the glycogen in your body, so you never get into your fat stores. This is the carb dependent person. If you are fat adapted and you're in the ketogenic state where 70% of your calories are coming from fat that you're either eating or from your body stores, your glycogen stores are used up. You're no longer eating out of your mini fridge. You're eating out of your deep freeze. Well, in that situation, as opposed to this situation where you're carb dependent, your insulin levels are going to be sky high in this situation. And here, when you're in the ketogenic state, your insulin levels are very low, with all of the positive things that happen when your insulin level is low. Here's some simple calorie restriction. This is a very important concept to understand. Is when you simply restrict calories. If you're eating a regular diet where 70% of your calories are coming from carbs, but let's say you're burning 2,000 calories a day or 2,200 calories a day, and you reduce your calories to 1,200 to 1,400 calories a day. Well, what happens over a period of weeks is your metabolic rate drops because your body says, oh my God, I'm starving, we're starving, so I don't want to die, so I'm going to reduce the number of calories that we're using. So your engines start to slow down, they start to shut down, your heart rate goes down, you feel cold, you feel tired, because that's how one of the energy producing things, it takes energy to produce heat, and you have no energy. And we've known this for a long time, and you feel terrible. So that's one of the reasons why people fall off diets. The interesting thing is that in The Biggest Loser, when they looked at these people a year after, even after they had gained most of their weight back again, when they looked at their basal metabolic rate, their metabolic rates were 1,000 calories below where they started when they were morbidly obese. So you can actually do permanent damage to your metabolism if you don't do this correctly. So here's what happens if you're intermittent fasting or you're in the ketogenic state. Your metabolic rate actually goes up initially, and it probably goes down a little bit, but it stays up there. So that's why you feel like you have energy, and you feel warm, and you feel good. So because your metabolic rate is not dropping. So here is a carb tolerant person, 3 meals plus snacks. Their insulin level is low, their blood sugar is low, all of their responses are correct when this is somebody who's eating carbs 6 times a day. It follows along that when they get a carb, when they eat carbs and their blood sugars go up with snacks and the various meals, their insulin level goes up along with it, but it goes right back down promptly. This is a carb tolerant person. And it's important to understand this because I've had people tell me, Dr. Friesen, I skipped all that ketogenic stuff. I didn't need to do that. I went directly to intermittent fasting where I was eating 1 meal a day, and essentially what I ate was potato chips and fruit. So I was eating mostly carbs, and I still lost weight. Well, this is a carb-tolerant person. This is what, if you looked at their blood sugars and their insulin levels, this is what it would look like. Now, if you are a person that has insulin resistance or you're carb intolerant, you have probably 70 or 60 or 70 pounds of fat to lose, this is what you look like. Your blood sugar is elevated. Every time you eat there's an exaggerated response for blood sugars and insulin, and your insulin level and your blood sugars never return to normal. So your insulin levels always stay high. So because your insulin levels are high, that's what causes a metabolic syndrome. Because you have the visceral fat problem that we talked about in the ketogenic diet. Your liver is full of fat, and this is what your liver looks like. Normal liver is on the left, and the fatty liver is on the right. That's what's important. Intermittent fasting and the ketogenic lifestyle. If you're eating fat, you eventually actually clear all of that out. Here's what happens if you're eating mostly fat. 70% of your calories are coming from fat and protein, very low carbs. Your insulin level is going to be very low, and there's a very low surges in your insulin because of that. So what's the importance of all of that is that if your insulin level is low, your brain can actually become sensitized to a hormone called leptin, and your body, that's what reduces the hunger. That's why people who are on the ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting, and they're not carb dependent any longer, their hunger goes away. So here's the different types of fasts. We have water fasting. This is just simply drinking water and taking some vitamins, and people do this for prolonged periods. I don't think this is a good idea. You people can get into a lot of trouble, not so much while they're doing it, but when they start refeeding. There's people have died during the refeeding phase, as if this is not done correctly. So just doing this on your own, I don't think is a good idea. So the other is intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. This is where you eat your calories in a specific window. Typically is what we've done in the past is you have breakfast at 7 and you finish your last meal at 7 in the evening. So you have a 12-hour fast. So you eat for 12 hours, you fast for 12 hours. You're not going to get any benefits of fasting if you do that. And then there's 16-8 or 18-20, 18-6. Where you fast for 16 hours, eat for 8, or fast for 18 hours, eat for 6. So maybe your window is from 2 to 8 or 12 to 8. You have to figure out what works best for you, what you choose to do. And then there's the OMAD, or 1 meal a day. This is a 22-hour fast, and you're eating for 2 hours. That's actually pretty easy to do. It's a simple thing to do. Alternate day fasting, where you eat one day normally and you don't eat the next. The compliance rate is very poor with this. It's actually very difficult to do. And a lot of people who try it, they fall off the diet. So the other one is 5-2. This was popularized by Dr. Mosley from the United Kingdom. He put a book out where you basically eat what you want for 5 days. Try to be keto, low carb, but 2 days a week you eat minimal calories. It's probably somewhere around 500 calories. And this is the fasting mimicking diet as well. Walter Longo out of Scripps talks about this. And this is what he's found is it really increases the lifespan of rats and primates, and suspects this is going to do it for humans as well. But it's going to take a long time before we figure out whether that's true or not. And then there's extended fasting. This is multiple day fasts. This is some people do this for a week, 10 days. It's very difficult to do, but if you can do it, and if you're eating something, certainly less than 500 calories a day, it's possible. The world record is Angus Barbari. He was Barbiri. He was a Scotsman who fasted for 382 days. He did this under medical supervision. Lost 276 pounds. He has the world record. So, how do you start fasting? Well, if you're carb tolerant, if you're metabolically healthy, don't have insulin resistance, you can just do it. You just start by easiest way is to just stop eating breakfast for 3 or 4 or 5 days. Just the first meal of the day is at lunch, and then you have dinner, and you eat nothing again until lunch the following day. Once you're used to that, it takes a while, takes a week to 2 weeks for you to get used to that, and then once you are, we'll try to make your break your fast later and later in the afternoon, maybe at 2:00. So you're eating at 2:00 and at dinner time, or however you want to do it, and then most of your calories you're eating in that window, and you shouldn't have any trouble. If you are, and this is what you land up looking like. If you're a carb tolerant person, even if you're eating carbs during your window, you'll get a surge in blood sugar and your insulin level comes up and then goes back down again appropriately without any problem. So your insulin levels are low for the majority of the day when in between those 2 meals. And you get all of the benefits of fasting by doing that. Now, if you're a carb intolerant person, or you have insulin, is another word of saying insulin resistance, and you're metabolically sick with blood pressure elevated, blood sugar up, cholesterol up, the markers of metabolic syndrome, that probably won't work for you, because this is what you'll end up looking like is when if you start off with your sugars being high, you get an abnormal, exaggerated response for insulin, because insulin levels is elevated anyways. And your insulin level and blood sugars never really go down to normal. This is if you're eating carbs during your window. Unlike the carb tolerant person, if you have insulin resistance and are carb intolerant, it's extremely difficult to do that. So what I would recommend, if that's your situation, is and I actually think most people should do this. You start off by getting into a ketogenic state even for 2 weeks or a month. You're eating frequent meals. 70% of your calories are coming from fat. You're moderate protein. You're in ketosis. You're not hungry. So then it's very easy. In fact, then is to start making your window of eating narrower and narrower. So you start off with again skipping lunch or breakfast, and then just eating your lunch and dinner. If you're in the ketogenic state, this is what your blood sugar and insulin levels would look like if you're eating 70% of your calories are coming from fat. And protein, and only maybe 5% coming from carbs. There's just little bumps in your blood sugar and little bumps in insulin, you're not hungry. So it's actually much easier to do, and it's much easier to sustain this. So this is sort of some facts. If you're carb intolerant, this is from the ketogenic. This is essentially the same as the ketogenic diet. So it's important to start with limiting carbohydrates to 20 to 30 grams a day. Even if you're eating in that window, you eat until satisfied at the beginning 3 times a day, and if you need a snack, go ahead and have a keto snack. Again, what you're trying to do is make sure that insulin level gets down low and stays there. I think page 4, following page 4, which I'll show below, this is Eric Westman's diet. They don't measure ketones, they don't count calories. You just eat off of this. If it's on page 4, you eat it. If it's not on page 4, you don't eat it. And that's pretty well guarantees that you'll go into ketosis. Very important to replace fluids and electrolytes, particularly salt. You have to eat about 2 teaspoons a day, or you'll end up getting the Atkins or keto flu. They used to think this was somehow related to ketones, but it's not. It's just related to the fact that you're not eating enough salt, and your blood volume goes down, and you get dizzy, and you feel tired and feel crappy. So if you eat some salt, you'll find out very quickly you develop salt craving. Salt in your coffee tastes good. A cup of bouillon fixes that as well. And you have to drink plenty of water. Magnesium deficiency is very common, particularly in if you have metabolic syndrome. The metabolically ill almost universally are magnesium deficient. So if you don't have kidney failure, you need to make sure you're taking a magnesium supplement. And how do you know if you're magnesium deficient? Well, you'll get muscle cramps. If you're getting muscle cramps, that's almost certainly what it is, and you need to make sure you're taking extra magnesium. This should give you balanced nutrition if you follow page 4, but it wouldn't hurt to take a multivitamin and some minerals as well. This is not a high protein diet. I'm going to stress this over and over again, because if you eat high protein, and that's a very easy thing to do when you go low carb, is to switch over to eating high protein. What happens is, first of all, it's not sustainable because you feel bad, but the high protein actually stimulates insulin. So your insulin level goes up, and once your insulin level goes up, you're leptin insensitive, and it actually makes you hungry. Losing your fear of fat is probably one of the most difficult parts of all of this. You can't cheat. You can. If you do cheat, you're going to find out very quickly that you go out of ketosis. your hunger comes back again, and it's very difficult to sustain. People say, well, I'll intermittently fast during the week, and on the weekend I'll do whatever I want. Well, if you're carb tolerant, you can get away with it. But if you're carb intolerant, it becomes very difficult because you need to be in ketosis to get rid of that insulin resistance. Beverages, lots of water. Black tea and coffee is good. I don't think that diet drinks are a problem. Some people say that there is some evidence that just the sweet taste in your mouth stimulates insulin. But just think of them as treats. You don't drink 20 diet sodas a day, but maybe you could have one or two. Alcohol should be avoided for obvious reasons, because that helps your liver get rid of the fat if you're not drinking alcohol. And that's just it's a lot of calories that you don't need. Exercise is good, particularly resistance training with weights. The good thing about ketogenic lifestyle and the intermittent fasting, you really don't lose muscle mass. Your lean body mass does not go down, as opposed to starvation kind of diets. But it's definitely more helpful if you can do some resistance, some light weights, and because the other interesting, bodybuilders are using this, because when you fast, your growth hormone level rises progressively during your fast. So if you do some resistance training and then eat a moderate protein, this goes a long way to keeping your muscle mass up. Eat real food, don't eat diet foods, and as I said, follow page 4. This is page 4. It's a very effective way of going into ketosis without a lot of fuss. So the benefits of intermittent fasting: mobilizing fat, particularly visceral fat. And people say, oh God, I don't know, I got to lose 100 pounds. Well, yes, maybe you do, but if you get rid of your fatty liver and get some fat out of the abdomen, your visceral fat, this goes a long way to reversing the metabolic syndrome. So your metabolic markers can all get better in a matter of 4 or 5 weeks if you do this. So that makes it really, being metabolically healthy is even more important than losing weight. Because a lot of, if you've got 40 pounds, there's a cosmetic issue. Maybe you don't like the way you look, but it's more important that you become metabolically healthy. If you maintain ketosis with the intermittent fasting, there's very little hunger because of the leptin sensitivity. Your basal metabolic rate stays up and can actually increase, which is very important. As I said, human growth hormone rises during your fast, and that helps keep your lean body mass up. You have incredible amounts of energy because of the adrenaline and noradrenaline that's you're pumping out. And of course, reversal of the metabolic syndrome is probably the most important thing, and the inflammatory markers get dramatically better in your blood tests. So the intermittent fasting take home: tailor the whole process. Once you understand this, do whatever is comfortable for you. Starting in ketosis makes it much easier to do intermittent fasting and to maintain it. Restricting protein to 0.8 grams per pound of lean body mass. Well, how much is this? Most men are probably going to be around 110 pounds of lean body mass. So like 100 grams of protein for men, 80 grams of protein for women will probably do it. This is a high quality protein. Keep carbs down to less than 50 grams a day. Plenty of water or other liquids. And this is really important. Make sure you're getting 2 teaspoons of salt a day in your diet. And if you start feeling bad, or if you get the Atkins flu, or you're feeling dizzy when you stand up, or you're not feeling good, well, you make sure you're eating some salty broths, and that usually reverses it. And magnesium supplementation is extremely important. So what's the most important thing about intermittent fasting? The most important thing is you have to do it. And now you know how to do it. If you're carb tolerant, just do whatever you want, as long as you're making that window small. If you're carb intolerant, you're metabolically, you have metabolic syndrome, or you're not metabolically healthy, you've got a lot of fat to lose, well, then you have to, it's a little bit more difficult, but now you know how to do it. So good luck with your journey. I'm going to be posting more little short videos on specific issues like cholesterol, about autophagy, tips on how to get that much fat in your diet, which is very difficult, so you can look forward to seeing them. In the meantime, maybe you could subscribe, or if you like this video, like it, or you can leave comments, and I'll actually try to respond to them. So good luck with your journey. Thank you.